When I was looking at your company, excuse me, and we'll dive into the company and what it does shortly, but you had a previous company name, if I'm correct. It was Velocity Leadership versus what it is today, Exponential Results. What was the cause for the shift or the transition?
People or people motivated people, just like the name implies, they tend to be more driven and try to get things done through people and always thinking about what is the impact of this to people that are involved. How is this going to benefit people? So RQ stands for Relationship Intelligence Quotient, just like EQ. And if you think about it in this way, it is the next evolution of emotional intelligence. Okay.
All right, well, welcome again, Team ET. As you've heard me introduce, today we're speaking with my namesake, Miss Karen Brown. As far as I know, Karen, we have no relationship background, but you're anyway far too advanced in your achievements to be related with me. Why I can finish ultra marathon, corporate CEO, the list goes on. So perhaps one day we'll do a 6 degrees of separation theory or something and see whether we can find any linkage. But today, team, we're going to be plunging deep, looking for leadership blind spots. Now, when I first heard about this from Karen, I was thinking, yeah, well, okay, we're going to be talking about the good old Johari's window exercise. However, I've since discovered, to my joy, I have to say, that we're going to be delving into the mind, looking at neuroscience, going into the subconscious as well as the automated unconscious, I have to say. So I'm pretty excited. We're going to also be tapping into neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, you probably know it better by, and discussing how to break unhelpful, limiting thinking patterns that ultimately shape our behavior. So we'll be exploring as well something called RQ, which you probably haven't heard of. Karen will be able to share all of this. And this has an impact around teams. And I hope if we ask really nicely, we might even coax Karen into sharing about how she leverages NLP for state changes herself in her training and the races that she participates in. So with all of that said, Karen Brown, welcome to the ET Project. Great joy to have you here with us.
Thank you, Wayne. Really excited to be here. Yeah, and I'd love to find out later that, maybe we are long lost relatives in some way or shape or form.
Look, I'm happy to cling on to your success story. So if we can find a link, I'm more than happy. What I'd like to do is hit you with a few rapid fire questions just to build a bit of a profile around who you are and your identity and some of your core beliefs, etc. So if you're okay, we won't go for too long. Well, maybe 4 or 5 questions, but I like to understand people's identity, who they are, rather than read their bio and get their history. We'll talk about that more so later. But so the first question would be, who is Karen Brown in your own words?
Well, I'm just glad you didn't ask me, what's my spirit animal or, what kind of tree would I be? Some sort of personality psychometric test like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Karen Brown is an accomplished ultra athlete, having competed on the world stage at one point for 6 years, and an author. I've been a speaker. The one thing that I am gifted at, and I repeat that, the one thing I am gifted at is behavior, and reading people's behavior, and therefore executive leadership coaching. And I'm also a very humble and yet driven person, like you might imagine. And gosh, a year ago, I just took up the electric guitar out of the blue. I've never played a musical instrument before and got a spark of an idea, and I went with it, and I am having a blast. I love doing new things. I am a pilgrim of self-discovery and continuous growth.
Very nice. I want to digress a moment because I just had a flashback when I was looking at your website or looking at LinkedIn, maybe. You recently got engaged.
Yes. Thanks for stalking me so closely.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
yes, we became engaged on New Year's Eve.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. Sorry to digress. So back to the questions. Your number one core value. What do you believe that to be?
My number one core value would be growth.
Okay.
Growth, yeah, for sure.
And then almost the alternate to that is, do you know your greatest limiting fear? Or not fear, belief. Let's say belief.
Oh, now you're right up my alley. My
Um,
second published work is on limiting beliefs.
hmm,
Uh, that's going to take me a second because I've done such a good job
yeah.
of using my own system, which is from neuroscience,
Hmm,
that I don't really have many limiting beliefs left.
right.
Um, I truly know I can do anything
Hmm,
that I dream up, honestly.
no, nice.
Um, well, I'll never be Eddie Van Halen or Jimi Hendrix. I'm trying. I'm really trying.
Yeah,
And I'm hearing their songs, but as my guitar instructor keeps telling me, wow, you got a long way to go, kid.
I'm dubious about you saying you never, because I think your track record doesn't support that. Anyway, higher purpose. Do you have anything you're striving for longer term?
Yes, absolutely. Number one, eradicate limiting beliefs, and humans struggle with them.
Mm,
They're literally a bug that's left over in our operating system, and
yeah.
they really don't serve the original intended purpose anymore.
Hmm.
They really just hold us back from our potential. So that's why I wrote the book, and
Yeah.
so I'd love to see that happen in my lifetime. Second is our purpose, which is to elevate leadership performance and effectiveness, and to help leaders realize their potential.
Hmm.
I really do feel like that is my purpose on the earth, my special purpose. So there you have it.
Very nice. Last question in this little set. If you
Mhm.
were shipwrecked on a desert island, here we're going to stretch the imagination, but shipwrecked, and you could choose two other people to be there with you, who would they be?
Well, first would be my fiance, of course.
Of course, of course.
And you know what? If he wasn't my fiance, I would still choose him first.
Like,
Honestly, he is, yeah, he is a extraordinary human being.
hmm,
Uh, the other person I would choose is my sister.
okay,
I would say the same about her. If we weren't sisters, I would still uh, choose her as a chosen family member. And I think she is
right.
one of the
Wow,
most remarkable people walking the earth.
nice. Very nice. Well, thank you for sharing, Karen. Great to get a little bit of a deeper insight, let's say. What I'd like to do first, before we get into this broader topic, career history wise, I know it's quite extensive. So perhaps, if you don't mind, if you can just share a little bit of the highlights of the career.
Is that your way of saying I'm older?
No, no, and you can see I stumbled at the end because I thought, did that come out that way?
I don't mind at all. I have a birthday. I'm about to turn 56. I'm proud of it, and I feel better than ever. And I know that age is just a number. That's all it is. So yes, the short version of my career um, began in commercial real estate.
Hmm.
Back then, that was still a boys' club. I think I'm okay in saying that.
Right.
Um, And I was so excited to be a part of that world that I didn't even know enough to be scared.
Mm.
I literally just jumped in with both feet and soaked up all the knowledge I could like a sponge. I
Right.
was in it for 15 years. I was successful in it. I loved it. I was a great match for it.
Mm.
And I think it was because I just came from a place of continuous learning. I want to learn and know everything I can, and was very open. And
Mhm.
so anyone who would teach me, I would take their advice, whatever they had to teach, I would take.
Right.
So just for 15 years, and during that time, I was an up and coming corporate leader. I went from a great individual contributor, then got promoted into leadership, promoted to my highest level of incompetence, you might say. And and back then, when you were promoted and then suddenly you found yourself leading a team, you were expected how to figure out how to bring out the best performance from that team. There was
Mm.
no there was no leadership coaching back then. There was no how to be a leader manual. There was nothing like that. We didn't even have podcasts. It was way back in the Stone Age. And so I really didn't know what to do. And I did what came naturally to me, which is asking people questions about why they do what they do and why they don't do certain things.
Mhm.
And so I would ask team members things like, what motivates you to get out of bed every morning and come in and work here? What stops you? What demotivates you? And when I found that it really worked well, I sort of stood back and scratched my head and went, okay, well, what am I doing exactly? And why is it working?
Mm.
I was really thrilled it was working, but I didn't know why and I didn't know what it was I was doing.
Mm.
Quickly found out that I was coaching people.
Mhm.
Uh, and then I was literally finding out what they needed, giving it to them, and then getting out of their way,
Yeah.
or empowering and supporting them. And it worked so beautifully. And I thought, wow, I really love this. So you could say I backed into coaching because I really did. And then I became an internal coach at the companies where I worked, still in commercial real estate. Then
Mm.
I got into formal coaching with a $270 billion global company that's in real estate, has a two initials, one of which begins with or starts my first name. So you might be able to put together who that is.
Mm.
Anyway, went to work for them as a master coach. And that's when it was then and in the years preceding that, that's when I worked toward and received all of my mastery level credentials, behavioral
Right.
patterns, neuro-linguistic programming, executive leadership coaching,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of that as we go through. So interesting. Now, when I was looking at your company, excuse me, and we'll dive into the company and what it does shortly. But you had a previous company name, if I'm correct. It was Velocity Leadership versus what it is today, Exponential Results. What was the cause for the shift or the transition?
Ooh, actually, there was a name prior to Velocity Leadership
Ah.
Consulting, and that was Divine Potential. So what happened was in my journey to the Ironman World Championships and the year that I crossed the finish line there, which was 2012,
Hmm.
uh, I had a huge epiphany where everything I had been working on and my experience up to that point all coalesced into this almost explosion in this epiphany that I wanted to start my own company to bring neuroscience concepts into leadership development and coaching that hadn't been done before. Now think back, Brene Brown wasn't on the scene. Simon Sinek wasn't around yet. Adam
Hmm.
Grant, he had published books, but not on this subject yet.
Hmm.
So really wasn't anybody like us in the space yet. And so I all of a sudden put it together that, oh, wait a minute, this is the game changer. This is the exponential multiplier. that
Right.
leaders have been seeking for decades, that it really does enable us to elevate quickly and permanently.
Okay.
So then I founded the company on that precept in 2012, and then began trying to get some traction with it.
And here we are today. So maybe just give a brief introduction to what it is you're doing now with the company and how that's helping people.
Yeah, so we are a full service leadership development firm. Primarily, we work in working with teams, of course, executives. And by executives, I mean director level up through C-suite. So that's where we really focus. And we work with teams and executives in one-on-one or team coaching. We are also starting to work with successors, because we've seen over the last couple of years that there's a real gap in the market for that work. There's a lot of newer leaders that are ascending and stepping in to take the reins of a outward transitioning leader, and it's not going well. They're not ready, or they take over and they fail. And so there's a big gap there. Also for new leaders, rising leaders, it's very different now because there are five generations in the workforce all at once. And it is quite something to figure out how to tap into every generation's motivation and how to bring out their best. So I also see that was an important thing for us to start offering in our professional programs.
Yeah, that in itself could be a whole podcast discussion. There is so much variance we're seeing as well between the different generations. And I guess it's not unusual when I reflect back on, if we think back to what would have been happening during the industrial age, probably at this transitional stage, right? So we're transitioning into this new era, and the younger generations are growing up with it, whereas people like myself, and thank you for sharing your age, by the way. I'm still your senior. I'm 64 this year, so so we're going well. Yeah. So I'm right there with you in sensing that. Our viewers can clearly see hanging on the wall behind you a picture of the Iron Man, and that's it. So we can't move forward until you share a little bit about that 6-year period that you spoke about earlier, if you don't mind, and just fill us in on what that whole period was like for you.
Oh gosh, how long is your show again? Okay, the short version. So Ironman World Championships was a lifelong dream for me. I first saw it on TV on Wide World of Sports when I was 14, 1982, Julie Moss. And up till then, had never heard of the Ironman, had no clue what it was, didn't know about triathlons, nothing. Now I was athletic my whole life, but in recreational sports, both individual and team sports, but had never heard of triathlon or the Ironman. So when I saw this, I was mesmerized, couldn't tear myself away from it. And I also started crying watching it. And I realized the reason I was having such a emotional uprising within me about it was because I sat there looking at it thinking, what if I have inside of me what it takes to do that, and I'm not tapping into it?
Right.
I'm living this small, safe life. And I decided, or I guess I roughly decided, that it was something I wanted to do eventually. However, for the next 28 years, I held myself back from pursuing it through limiting beliefs. And once I became educated about what those were and how they worked and then found out how to transform them. That very fall, I started training for Ironman. I hired a coach, I bought a bike, and I started training.
Wow.
And over the next 2 years, which is a very short period of time for someone to decide that they're going to pursue the Ironman World Championships, and to get there, that's a very short period of time. I have friends in the community that have been trying for 10 plus years to get there and still have not. So I used all of the neuroscience that I had been studying and practicing up to that point. I used myself as the guinea pig. I had to transform all of my limiting beliefs into the unlimiting version of them. And 2 years later, I crossed the finish line in Hawaii. And footnote, I got to race with Julie Moss.
Excellent. She would have been somewhat older than you at that stage, because I know of her as well, because you were 14. I was just 22 at that stage. So I was life-saving, and we also in Australia were very pro triathlon. Hawaii Ironman, not at that stage. I guess it was around then, but I didn't know about it. But we had a lot of people engaged in, the triathlon movement at that time. So yeah, I used to watch as well. So I know what you were feeling. It was a great era. So we're going to talk about NLP later, but if I could just jump ahead, we spoke the first time about how you use this for state changes yourself. Particularly in the races, because if anyone's listening, the Ironman, I think you talk about it, you have to complete it within 17 hours. And so you're out there for a long time. It's an individual sport. You may have a team at the different stations, but you're there by yourself. So how do you maintain the focus? How do you overcome the challenges that invariably you face during that period? Like how do you get through it yourself?
Yes. Well, as I said in our previous conversation, you think about everything and nothing.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, for me at least, and other athletes have shared the same thing with me. I think during that long period of time about everything that led me to that day. All of the training, all of the turns of fate that are plentiful in getting to something like that. All of the people and I've come in contact with, all of the relationships I formed, which have ended up being global connections and relationships. The magic of all of those, the wonder of it, and how I guess all of my discoveries during that time frame, during that process, most of which is usually something along the lines of, I used to think it was 90% physical and 10% mental. And it really is the opposite. And so usually during that time when I'm thinking of everything, I'm also marveling at how powerful our brains really are. And that once we understand how they work and our operating system, if you will, it's very easy to leverage that power, the power and the speed of it. Yeah. And I'm also trying to be in a flow state, which is thinking of nothing, just enjoying being in that runner's high, if you will, which is exactly what it feels like, only times 1,000. When I first started pursuing the Ironman, I had never completed a marathon. And so I had never found that runner's high. And I was so intrigued. I wanted to find it. What does that feel like? And so as my training grew longer and longer, I finally got into flow states. And oh, it was truly magnificent. I see why so many of uh, my brethren, if you will, are addicted to ultra sports. Because
Mm,
once you experience a flow state, it feels like nothing else. Gosh, maybe like an orgasm, if you will, but elongated, lasting, right?
mm,
You feel like you are connected to everything, and that everything is almost effortless.
right.
And it's almost as if you're floating and you're sort of watching yourself do this thing,
Mm.
uh, and magical and wonderful. Yeah, if I could figure out how to bottle that and sell it, I would.
Yeah, of course, you're talking about the run leg, which is the last leg. It's a marathon in itself, right? As part of the triathlon. So prior to that, you've already done the swim leg. You've done this enormous bike ride, and now you're talking about reaching this flow state, this high while you're running. It's
Well,
almost impossible.
actually, the flow state can happen any time.
Yes, yeah, true.
There's wonderful books out there. The one that I read that turned me on to this is by a Russian author. I honestly am blanking on her name, but it talks about the actual biology of a flow state and
Okay.
the parameters that you have to have that bring it about.
Mm,
So it can happen anywhere. It can happen when you're playing guitar. It can happen if you're playing frisbee. And for me, it happens in the swim. As soon as I get away from trying not to drown, it happens for me in the swim, on the bike, and in the marathon.
yeah, beautiful. You didn't stop with the triathlons, however, you went to the ultra marathons. We were just talking before we hit record, and your longest run, if I remember, was 320 miles, and you've done this race twice. What, where does the logic come into this? At what point do you say, okay, what's driving me here?
There is no logic involved in that. Zero. It's actually when your brain goes fully off the rails, then
Yeah.
you become an ultra endurance athlete. Yeah, and just a point of clarity, it is called the Ultraman, and it is a 3-day, 320-mile triathlon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. You know, a lot of what I guess starts this process for many people is developing their self-awareness. And I know you talk a lot about self-awareness. I'm a EQ um, facilitator, so I talk about it a lot.
Mhm.
One of the things that I often feel is we don't talk enough about the regulation that's required. For me, awareness is step one, but the self-regulation is the second step, which is often the hardest part. So we can become aware, but to actually do something about it is quite often the challenge. And I find that with a lot of people that I coach is, we can spend the time initially to create that awareness, to go deeper and help them see where their gaps are, their blind spots, to your point. Um,
Mhm.
Getting them to change that becomes their biggest challenge. So that's why I'm really interested in what you're now doing by incorporating NLP, and working to break the patterns, the thinking patterns. So maybe if you don't mind, we'll jump into the NLP and the coaching and how you're approaching that. I'd be interested to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming.
Mm,
And if you think about it this way, neuro-linguistics are the language of the brain, and behavioral patterns is the operating system.
right.
So behavioral patterns is just how our brains work, how they operate, and
Mm,
neurolinguistics is the language of the brain. So, and I should add that neurolinguistics and the language that we use, the words that we use on a daily basis, come straight from our subconscious.
mm,
We we have a really hard time filtering them unless we're lying, we're crafting something on purpose. And even then, you can totally tell when someone is doing it. So what I realized was that when you work in these two systems, then you are essentially working in the subconscious mind, which is almost infinitely more powerful and faster than working in your conscious mind. So for instance, your conscious mind processes volume and speed are around 2,000 bits of information per second and 100 to 150 miles per hour. So, decently fast car can go that speed. Compared, though, to your subconscious mind processing speed and volume is 2 billion bits of information per second. And the processing speed is just shy of the speed of light. Mm. So it makes sense then that if you work at that level in neurolinguistics and behavioral patterns, then change is much easier because your subconscious mind is the system that creates behavioral patterns. They're not created at the conscious level. And that then your speed of change and the permanence of change is going to be much more rapid and then lasting.
Right. So we're talking about the formation of neural pathways that then strengthen with repeated use. And what we try and do in your case when you're working with NLP and you're trying to break some of these limiting patterns is to the terminology rewire, but in actual fact we're trying to rewrite or reconnect the different synapses or the neural pathways, right? So it's a very intriguing process. When you're working with NLP has particular methods that help you to achieve that, right? So, there's anchoring is one of those methods. You have reframing, modeling. There's even a method called the swish model or method, right? So when you're doing it, are you using reframing or what is it you use to help break that pattern?
It's whatever is needed. So
Right.
it's whatever behavioral pattern presents itself, which we also use NLP as a diagnostic tool to be able to ask the leader a question. And then based on their very short answer, we can pick up immediately on the behavioral patterns that are ongoing there. And then we can dive into those and really shine a light on them. So it's completely conversational. We don't have, cap of electrodes that we're putting on someone to do this or hypnotizing anybody. It's completely naturally, organically conversational. It's just that the coach is an expert in NLP and behavioral patterns and can sort them out very, very quickly and then report them to the client and say, okay, how does this sound? Is this accurate? Is this how this plays out for you? Yeah. And then once they say yes, then we dive deeper and say, okay, well, where did this come from? Where did this originate? When do you remember doing this for the first time or thinking this for the first time? And then once they pinpoint that, we're able to ascertain why that behavioral pattern was created. Because our subconscious mind, again, works super fast. And what it does is it picks up on outcomes that we want, or maybe outcomes that we aren't getting in that particular moment, and then immediately produces or creates a new behavioral pattern to create that outcome or to get us that outcome. And then it just keeps repeating that behavioral pattern until we choose to look at it and or change it because it's no longer getting us the results that we want.
There's some very interesting studies that talk about how much of our time we spend in autopilot. And these patterns that you're talking about, these behaviors that are a resultant outcome of those patterns, they just drive our life. And it's when we're able to start to become more conscious about it and decide to make that change that things really turn around. So I like the connection that you're doing. You have a coaching model or method called Power Pathways.
Mhm.
This is for anyone that's a coach and about coaching models. I grew up with Professor Peter Hawkins and his CLEAR model, so it's somewhat different, but maybe you could explain your Power Pathway method if you don't mind.
Yeah. So it's 5 steps. And I'll just say this to preface it. It takes a lot less time to actually go through all the 5 steps conversationally with a client than
Right.
it will for me to explain them. So first of all, we're going to identify the leader's goals and objectives. What are we going for? What are we working on? Then we'll establish a plan, metrics of measurement, and target goal dates. How will we see progress? How will we know when we've achieved the goal? Then we will uncover the thinking patterns that are causing the challenges. We'll pinpoint the behavioral pattern that's at play. We will identify the root cause, look at the impact of that behavioral pattern, keeping it the same or changing it, and then choose a new pattern to run instead that's going to create the new, or that's going to achieve the goal or create the new outcome that you're going for. Then we'll evaluate and measure progress and accomplishments and determine the next level.
Very, very succinct. Nice. So we also spoke before about the difference between one-on-one coaching and team coaching. And I know you do both. You have a next level team development program that you offer. And this is where we come to this RQ area. So I hadn't heard about this until I spoke with you the first time. So I've had the joy of doing a little bit of research on it. So I'm a little bit more intelligent now about it, but it's about relationship intelligence. So would you like to share your understanding, because it'll be much better than mine? So would you like to share a little bit about what RQ is really all about?
Yes. So RQ stands for Relationship Intelligence Quotient, just like EQ. And if you think about it in this way, it is the next evolution of emotional intelligence. Okay. And it's all about, and it's scientifically rooted as well. It's all about the science of how we get things done through relationships. So how we achieve results through our relationships at work. And the truly remarkable and fascinating thing about this is it enables us to map out every executive leader's motivational value system, how they operate, how they try to get things done, and their conflict sequences, which is wonderful to see, especially with an executive team, because every time we've done this, we put the data up on the wall or up on the screen. And once everybody understands what they're looking at, they literally sit back in their chair and go, holy smokes, how in the world did you know that this is the dynamic that plays out with our team? How did you know that? Yeah, and it's uncanny, 100% accurate. And it's just scientific. It's not a psychometric test. It's not a personality test that, says, oh, well, your personality is wrong in some way, for what we're measuring or for the outcomes you want. No, it just inventories current behavior. That's it. And that alleviates a stumbling block for a lot of leaders to get into that self-awareness, because they get there through curiosity. Like, oh, look what this says. And it's not strengths and weaknesses. It's only strengths. So it's that the premise that none of this is good, bad, or has anything to do with capability or inability. It just is. And so, like, case in point, I'm working with a leadership team right now. And let's just say that several members of the team got sideways with each other. And this has gone on for a couple of years. It's gotten pretty distasteful. Anyway, their eyes are now being opened to how they operate, first of all, understanding that, and then being able to see how their counterpart operates. And all these light bulbs are going off. And they go, this makes so much sense now. This explains why they do what they do, why, how we've locked horns on some things, and how in other areas we work really well together. Wayne, I think you're muted.
Thank you. There's three areas, if I understand correctly. You look at performance, people, and process, and the way that it's revealed is like an inverted triangle, with each corner type of thing, and you are then plotting their strengths, as you said, or their oriented strengths, and you can clearly see the differences between the people. So I guess that's how it's presented. Is that how it works, or?
Yes, yeah. So this is all stems back to the work of Dr. Elias Porter. Remember, I said it was scientific, and he started working on this a couple of decades ago, actually 4 decades ago. And yes, so we're able to plot out graphically our individual motivational value systems and conflict sequences. So, and it comes out on a triangle, and each point of the triangle is a different area or motivator for us. And so one triangle is performance, one is people, and one is process. So all this means, wherever your dot lands on the graph is how you primarily try to get things done. Do you have more of performance in mind and results? And these folks, which is me, tend to be very fast-paced, high sense of urgency on everything. Everything is a priority. They make decisions rapidly. They probably talk rapidly. And they're just like, get out of my way so that I can get this done.
Yeah.
Then people or people motivated people, just like the name implies, they tend to be more driven and try to get things done through people, and always thinking about what is the impact of this to people that are involved. How is this going to benefit people? And then process, just like the name sounds, they're all about the process, data, analytics. How are we going to do this? What is the process of it? What is the process that's going to get us there? And they sometimes are called questioners as well, because if you are in a meeting with these lovely folks, they're all about the details and they can't ask enough questions. Well, what is this going to look like? Well, why are we doing it this way? Well, have we considered these other ways of doing it? On and on. These are also, this can play out in your personal life too. These are the researchers among us, right? They want to look at every single website, every single option, compare them all in a spreadsheet, and then make their decision, right? And this doesn't mean that any one style, if you will, is better than another, or one is worse than another. No, it just is. It's just the way that we operate. It's the way that we learned to operate to try to get things done.
Yeah, very good. You have an expression I read on the website, I think it was, talking about you take a systematic approach to deliver a systemic outcome, or look at the systemic problem, and that resonates with me because I'm typically a systemic coach. So I like to look at the whole, but also look at the parts in between and the interplay between those parts and the ripple effect of those individual components. And I see how this all fits together so nicely. So, yeah, I'm curious to learn more about that at some future points. So, um, always conscious of the time. So one final area that I'd like to touch on before we start to wrap up, and that's the coaching app that you have within your organization. So maybe you could just explain how that works within this whole landscape of what you do.
Yes. So our coaching app, thank you for that, is called Power Pathways Portal. And you can get a glimpse of it on the website in under Power Pathways and then Portal. And what we did was when I founded the company 11 years ago, I, of course, came from a leadership background and realized that we needed a system to for clients to work in along with their coach, and that also had all these functions to work in behavioral patterns and achieve goals and make all of that straightforward, if you will. You'll notice I shy away from the word easy only because I don't want it to be a misnomer.
Right.
You know, making behavioral changes is actually easy when you choose to do it, when you have a high level of willingness to do it. Then it comes pretty easily once you dig in and do the work. However, I don't tend to use that word. I use straightforward more often because I think that's easier for us to understand and to interpret for each of us. So that's everything that the app does. It has a metrics function, a goal setting function, different functions like a whiteboard where we can the coach and the client can work together in the same system at the same time on a piece of work. Worksheets, which we might give to a client, based on what we were talking about earlier with NLP.
Yes.
If they need, to anchor something or model or reframe, we can put something in a worksheet that is educational and just explains what it is and then how to do it. And then they can use that as a frame of reference that we can come back to over time, and they can continue to use as they move forward. Also, ongoing actions. So we can set up projects, say for a big goal that has actions involved with it. Sort of like if you think about a project management flow chart, kind of like that. And it's just a way of organizing the work best for the client. But I would say the coolest part about this is that it provides a structure that does make it straightforward for clients to do the work. That's what many clients have shared with us, that it's not this, kind of very loosey-goosey show up to your coaching session and your coach is just going to say, well, hey, Wayne, what do you want to work on today? And then they'll count on you to take notes and to, build in continuity between sessions. No, that's all built in within the structure of our system and app. And then it is also a mobile app so that you have all of this in the palm of your hand, wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in, whenever you're traveling, because that, supports you fully every day of the month to do this work and elevate your leadership effectiveness and performance, rather than just, the couple times a month when we have sessions.
Yeah, certainly I can see the value that clients would be able to get from using it for sure. One of the challenges for us that don't have this system is that we do exactly as you say. And you mean I'm not meant to ask, what would you like to talk about each day? I thought that's what I had to start with. Come on.
Oh, whoops.
I'm joking. So, Karen, obviously a lot going on in your world. Anything that you're working towards for the future, apart from getting married, I guess? Anything within the company, within the career that you're looking towards?
Since inception of the company, I have my goal has been for us to be the company of choice for
Right.
brain-based leadership development and coaching. And
Okay.
so that is still on the horizon and what I work toward every day.
Very nice. You have a book, Unlimiting Beliefs, if I recall correctly. Where can we access that?
Unlimiting Your Beliefs by Karen Brown, you can find on good old Amazon.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And final words of wisdom for our listeners. If they find themselves stuck, they find themselves needing help, what is your suggestion as a starting point for them?
Well, if you find yourself stuck and needing help, call us.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, and remember that you are in the driver's seat of your brain. You really are. It's just, again, that self-discovery and that self-awareness of how that works and how you are able to leverage your operating system, and that we all are truly capable of anything we can think of.
Very good. Well, Karen Brown, it's been, as expected, a great conversation. Great pleasure to have you on the ET project. Thank you so much, and I wish you well for the future, and I look forward to watching on LinkedIn when the wedding happens. So all the best for the future.
Thank you, Wayne. It has been delightful.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.